There's a spirit that defines every Tasmanian. Fight, gravel rash grit, devil-like determination. It's time to unleash this spirit on the great game. Without our boots on hallowed grounds, the AFL will never be complete, nor will we.
Hello and welcome to The Believers, Tasmania's AFL journey, celebrating the wonderful contribution of so many great Tasmanians to the national game. And at a time when we make the final push for a 19th AFL men's and women's licence. My guest today played at the highest level. Unfortunately, his career was set back by injury. He captain-coached Clarence to a premiership in the TANFL as it was in those days, went on to coach the Fitzroy Football Club and the Adelaide Crows, but perhaps his crowning moment as a coach was in 1990 at North Hobart Oval when he coached Tasmania to victory over Victoria. Robert Shaw, welcome to The Believers.
Thanks, Nico, and it's great to catch up with you with Penguins living legend. So it's great to catch up with you.
There are many more fine Tasmanians and people out of Penguin than me, and thankfully I'll get to chat to a few on the podcast as well as we go through, Robert. But June 24, 1990, what does that date mean to you? What memories does that bring back for you?
Well, that was an important day in Tasmania's history, or we thought it was, because we picked a very young side. It was state of origin, so it was a majority of players playing over here with probably about 6 or 7 boys from the local strong competitions, north, northwest and south. And we got rubbished a little bit about it in the local media because we went for a lot of emerging players that weren't, Paul Hudson hadn't made his way in. He was playing seconds. Trent Nichols hadn't made it. Graham Wright was about to play in a Collingwood premiership. I made Darren Pritchard captain. John McCarthy was an exciting young player. Lynch was emerging at fullback. Michael Gale and Brendan, the boys from Penguin. Michael was the second Brendan was the second ruckman in the forward pocket. Michael played on the wing. So I had a centre line of Gale, Scotty Clayton and Graham Wright. So Gale was, half-back. Darren Pritchard was on the wing. So, and it went from there. We'd been beaten reasonably comfortably the year before on the back of Gary Ayres' masterclass.
You were up at three-quarter time from memory in that game and then lost by about 56 points. So was that a real spur in 1990?
Sort of. And of course, the next year, we were 20-odd points in front going into the last quarter, and Ken Hinkley kicked 4 in the last quarter. So we weren't that far away from three. It's a bit like Essendon 99, 2000, 2001. Look, there was method in our madness, and coming out of the Sheedy school of giving young players opportunities, and Sheeds' greatest philosophy he passed on to me was, if you're going to make a mistake, always pick your next 100-game player. Who's going to play 100 games for Essendon? Who's going to play 100 games for Tasmania? So for me, it was who's going to form our team, our own team in Tasmania. And interestingly, and I can't actually recall, was it before or after, we had a very, not secretive meeting, we had a in-house meeting with executives from the Tasmanian board, Rodney Eads' dad, Brian, sadly no longer with us, and the players. And we were dealing with Ross Oakley and the likes of Ian Collins, and there was a lot of talk. And we were asked to vote, a show of hands in a meeting. If we get our own team in the next year, 2 or 3 years' time, how many will come back and play for that team? And it was a 99% vote. Only one, and I'm not going to say who it was because that's unfair, because it was purely career-based. He had a better career here than he could have there. But if there were 22 in the squad, which there were, 21 voted unanimously to return.
When you say here, you're talking about had a better career in Melbourne, where we're chatting at the moment. So
yeah, and so they would have returned. So
the passion was there.
The passion was there. The crowd was 18,000. The passion was there. The timing was perfect. And what happened then, I don't know. The next year we played Victoria, and as I said, we played exceptionally well again, beaten by an outstanding last quarter from Kenny Hinkley, kicked 4 goals. And, of course, the conspiracy theories abound. Next year in came the conglomerate, the Queensland Northern Territory combined side. So we were, and nothing against them. They had Buckley, Michael Long, Rioli. They had a great side, as you can imagine, and they beat us. They moved the game off North Hobart, our spiritual home, to Bellarive Oval.
I remember being there, actually, as a kid.
They gave us no longer Victoria, and as you see in front of you right there, that was 1993. That's Tasmania's last ever State of Origin jumper, and we never we disappeared literally off our own map in the space of 2 years.
Extraordinary. Now, we do ask you to bring in something special, something that has great meaning to you, a connection to Tasmanian football, and you've brought in this magnificent football jumper. I mean, just to look at it in the flesh, and it's a classic old woolen jumper, not like the ones of today as well, but to see that map and the power of that image, I don't think people understand just how much that means to Tasmania and that symbol right there.
It means everything to you and me because we're a bit apart in our age or significant part. You know, I'm in my 60s. I've grown up idolising that jumper because to me, it is unique. Now, we don't know, Alistair, we might have a different opinion to me. We don't know if we can have that as our jumper.
What do you think?
But I'm for it in some form.
Yeah, me too. Right? Absolutely.
I don't know whether we can – I don't know the copyright rules and all that. So I don't know whether we can adapt that. But what you and I both know is a team that's just come into Tasmania called the Jack Jumpers. Their colours are that, right? They play passionately. Their coaches spent 2 years without his family, a commitment to Tasmania, and they're a bee's diaphragm out of playing finals.
Yeah, it's been terrific.
And they fill halls. Like they're a smaller version of us with greatest respect to basketball.
Yep.
But they are exactly what you're capable of.
Yeah,
I don't know where the players come from. I don't know whether they come from Penguin or Scottsdale or St Helens, and I don't care. I see them united under that.
Yep.
And that's on the back of those other jumpers I brought in, which represent the three areas, the northwest coast, the north and the south, which have had an amazing rivalry.
The interesting thing I've heard discussed around the jumper and when Tasmania, and I think when Tasmania gets its team in the AFL is, can you wear that jumper given it was the state jumper? That's the jumper that Tasmanians wear. But if you look back through the history of Tasmanian football, some of our great triumphs, 1960, for example, Stuart Spencer, he wasn't a Tasmanian. So there have been non-Tasmanians wear that jumper. I don't think it's an issue at all. It's the symbolism of that jumper that I think Tasmanians look at and they immediately feel a connection to and a passion for, and that overrides anything else.
Right, and you've summed it up perfectly because it probably leads into the next phase. We will not embrace relocation. We will not embrace hybrid, and we will not embrace some foreign colour,
no chance,
or native bird or animal from some abstract graphic artist where our people, go to the football and they barrack for Penguins colours. They barrack for North Launceston. They travel out to Scottsdale to watch Scottsdale. They'll go down to Queenborough to watch and they will identify. The key to this is our people must identify.
Has to be authentic.
We have to be us and authentic, and that's the message. And that's where you get a little bit, the strength is the perceived weakness. Oh, you three areas, you're always fighting. Well, on the field, yes, but it was always a goal to get that jumper.
Absolutely.
And the football was extraordinary.
And I think during your era of playing, the rivalry was probably stronger. And people didn't necessarily leave their regions. When I was growing up in Penguin, for example, there were kids who'd never been to Hobart. Launceston was an enormous trip for some people. These days, people are so much more transient. So I don't think that rivalry exists to the same level as it used to. And the greatest example of that has been the Hobart Hurricanes. Who would have thought a team from Hobart could go and play a match at York Park in Launceston and sell it out? So the Launcestonians are getting behind the team from Hobart. So that rivalry, and Tim Lane sums it up beautifully when he says that this would be the most unifying thing that could happen for Tasmania.
It's the opposite. People that want to put a little dagger in our back say, "Oh, you're always fighting," you know. No, you got it wrong. You don't understand. And Tim's right. I spoke to him on the phone the other day. We had a chat about where we sit and all that sort of thing. So you're absolutely right. And that leads into another point, who and how you set it up. Because if you don't get it right, if you build it right, you know,
it's long-lasting.
Yeah.
There's no threat to it. And
it's a field of dreams thing.
Yep.
If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely.
And it will inspire kids. It will, the spin-offs, the investment is going to be large, but the reward on that investment is going to be incredible for our state and our people and our schools and our infrastructure. You know, I sort of had a bit of a wry smile, you know, that if they do, they're going to spend millions on upgrading York Park, which is great, and maybe we do build that ground. But I sort of said it was capped at 27,000. If Tasmania are playing Collingwood, right, at either of those grounds, they're both not big enough. People will come on buses. They will come on trains. I know 10,000 Essendon supporters that will come over on the Spirit on the Wednesday. They'll go to Cradle Mountain, then they'll go down the West Coast. They'll go and have a look at Lake Pedder. They'll do a little bit of fishing in the lakes, right? They'll get on a bus tour to Port Arthur, and they will have spent $1,000 in 2 or 3 days to look at Tasmania, because they'll say, "Why don't we make this a trip?" And then on Sunday afternoon at 1:00, they get to watch Essendon versus Tasmania.
There are enormous broad spin-offs, aren't there?
Oh.
And Tasmania is such an appealing place as it is. But if you have that point of focus, I'm going to go down for the football, but I'm going to make a week of it, then that's huge. You touched something earlier around children. So when you were playing football as a youngster in Tasmania, and you talk about the passion for the state jumper, but your local clubs as well, we have seen over recent decades that participation, key age groups, young men not playing to the same degree as they used to. And you would think that this is going to lead to a turning around of that, hopefully. But I want to chat to you about your experiences playing football as a young person.
Yeah.
So your father was heavily involved in the Sandy Bay Football Club?
Yeah. My nan and pop, Bessie and Robert Young of King Street, Sandy Bay, they used to follow North Hobart because there wasn't a Sandy Bay Football Club pre-war. And Sandy Bay came into existence after the war in 1945 at a meeting at what is now the Rest Point Casino. And they attended that very first meeting because of the passion, sort of similar to this. This is our local area. We're going to follow a local footy club. And that's the strength of Tasmania. We've all got our towns. And so they went to that meeting. Dad came down after the war, met their daughter, Elizabeth Young, who is my mum. They were married in 1952. Dad played 136 games, 100-game life member, and was in the top 50 Sandy Bay players of all time. And then I grew up, like you did, with heroes. And you say, why is it dropped off? Well, growing up's a lot different now to what it was. As a school teacher, we spend most of our time getting phones out of their hands and trying to get them to homework instead of going to their rooms and doing games. You know, the young Jono over here, you know, he's just out of that age group, but he would relate to that and going through the school system. So I'm hopeful that what this does, see, when you and I grew up, I passionately followed Sandy Bay, but my heroes, when John Devine came to North Hobart and when Darryl Baldock came, and even when I was about 5 or 6 or 7, a bloke from Essendon came to Scottsdale called Brian Donahue, and he became Essendon's chairman of selectors. And what he did for that community, so all over the state, you had heroes. I would go to the North Hobart Clarence game because I wanted to watch John Bingley play John Devine and listen outside the North Hobart rooms to John Devine speak. You've done exactly the same
absolutely.
thing. And that now no longer exists. And we could run a whole show on right. But philosophically, we have to turn it around and give kids a dream. I played football, A, because of family, and B, because I had heroes, right? And I want to be like them. So if you have players playing this team in this sort of jumper and it starts to develop local product, it can't from them, we'll have we'll go into a draft system and all that sort of thing. That's being worked out now. So you give kids a dream and an aspiration, and they'll be saying to Mum, I might go down to Penguin under-16s. There's, can you take me down to training?
Go and have a kick.
I want to have a kick with my mates, and can we go to the footy on Saturday to watch Tasmania versus Fremantle at York Park? So to me, it is a field of dreams.
Yep.
And I know I'm an old romantic, but the last scene of Field of Dreams is that it's dark and it just shows the lights of the cars. That's one of the great scenes in a movie, and that's us. That's what it will be. I'll be probably in my 70s, but I still have the childish dream. I want to see this.
Yeah, and it's been going on for so long, as you say, that conversation that existed after the famous win in 1990. I remember talk when I was a kid about, building a stadium at the showgrounds out near Elwick Racecourse, that kind of thing. It's been going on, and this time it does feel like it's in touching distance. So on your career, you had a couple of years of senior football at Sandy Bay,
I did,
and then you went across to Clarence where you were captain coach and you won a premiership.
In Tassie.
Yeah, your Tassie footy.
Yeah, Tasmania was sensational for me because I got to play with the blokes that I idolised. I got to play with Roger Steele and Rodney Olsen and Graham Mackey and Michael Elliott and Barry Joyce.
Greats of the Sandy Bay Footy Club.
Greats, and I got to play alongside them. I thought there's nothing better. So I didn't have aspirations for the AFL because I just did that. And, of course, I was still in high school when I went there, and I played 6 games in my first year, 12, and then Essendon came knocking, and I had a career in the AFL till I went back in 84. So I retired at 26 because of injuries, and Noel Leary, a great Ulverston man. He was
fantastic man.
Yeah, he captain coached Clarence, and he said there's a job going at Clarence. Good club. We've won 79. We won 81. Good list. So, and I went down there and had 2 of the greatest years played. I'd had a year off. I'd let my injuries heal, and I played a state game against, I think, Queensland. Played the PFL game. So I was playing out of dream as the captain coach, and unfortunately I had to go back to Melbourne because in those days, just quickly, I'd deferred a uni degree course to be a phys ed teacher and a Bachelor of Applied Science. And now it's a little bit different, but I got a letter at the end of 85. We'd just been beaten in the 85 grand final by Glenorchy by 4 points. I got a letter that says, if you do not come back to the uni, your position will no longer exist. And I'd put in 3 hard years of study. It's still an interesting decision because we were home. My firstborn, Kate, was born down there. We were settled. My family's there growing up, Hobart. And it's still the best decision I ever made because right now, even though in semi-retirement, I can go and work as a teacher anywhere.
Yep.
I've never been lucky in football, but I've never been able to work because of teaching. So,
yeah, that's the bonus of that decision, isn't it? 85, Danny Ling was the coach, and you were coming hard at Glenorchy in the last quarter, weren't you, after
It
winning?
was funny because 84, they were the better team.
Well, this is it. You finished on top in 85 and lost the grand final to Glenorchy, and it was the other way around in 1984, wasn't
we
it?
finished 6 games behind them in 84. Yeah, we were so competitive and so close. And because you play each other, 4 times a year because of the 6-team situation, very hard to get up all the time and they get you. So we timed our run in 84 and they timed their run and they were comfortably in front, but we did come home very hard and it was the old story, the ball was in our forward pocket when the siren went, but both teams thoroughly deserved their respective premierships, no doubt.
Yeah. And you had some great players at Clarence during that time. Chris Rewalt was one of them, who was a real champion of the football club, obviously Jack's dad. For those that don't know much about Chris as a player, I know going right back to schoolboy football, he was part of that famous Tasmanian team that won the entire carnival, beat every single state in the competition. And that was a fairly, it wasn't really a team that comprised big name footballers. I think Aaron Cornelius' dad, David, was in that team as well, but there weren't too many who went on and played in the VFL beyond that. But was Chris the type of player who could have played at a high level, do you think?
Well, Chris went to St Kilda, but I don't know the background, whether he was your typical Tasmanian that went there, didn't like Melbourne. The number of players that have done that, or weren't cleared back in the old days. Don Gale's the classic example. When I think might have been South Melbourne.
Yes, it was.
Didn't get cleared. Leadham did a. Chris went over there. Chris is Jack's dad. Very similar characteristics in a lot of ways. Flamboyant, out there, a very passionate, very emotional, right? But he had a little bit of Croswell in him, Chris. If the game didn't sort of mean something, right, he'd have a downer, a quiet game. But he was in the top 3 players on the ground in the 79, 81 and 84 premierships. So he was your ultimate big occasion player. He would ruck, centre half forward, 6'4", 15 stone, mobile. Had a couple of down years where he lost motivation. He was he was a teacher, so he had to travel up and back. But he was a driving force in the premiership, got himself back into state teams. And he had a younger brother, Peter, who was our second ruckman. So, and Ray Rewalt, the other brother, who played in the 79 and 81 premiership. Yeah, so a very strong Rewalt connection. And Chris and, of course, young Jack played in a premiership against New Norfolk as a 16-year-old. So a great history and a very reliable family, particularly on the footy field, responsible, big occasion players.
Yeah.
Jack's a big occasion player.
Loves it. Absolutely loves it.
So.
Do you see any similarities in obviously physiques and professional football has changed the way you can go about it, but do you see similarities between those two, Chris and Jack?
Jack's smaller and more mobile, can move out to a flank more. Chris was more your central full forward, centre half forward, and very, very good state ruckman. So different types of players, and I don't know where it's come from. Chris was a good kick, but an awkward kick. His brother Peter was an average to awkward kick, but a pure ruckman, whereas Jack has consummate skills.
Yeah.
So must have got it from Mum, Leslie.
Left and right foot too, Jack. And then you mentioned your time at Essendon, which was all too brief. Injuries sort of curtailed you there. But in the tail end of that, did Kevin Sheedy give you an opportunity that sort of first got you into coaching as an opposition analyst?
That's what got me into Clarence and got me home because end of 82, I didn't play a game in 82 because of injury and I was the so-called seconds. So I had the writing on the wall at 25. I'd been there since, I played 8 years of senior football and I didn't play a game in 82. And I'd come through with the emerging premiership team. My mates were Folds and Nagel and Van der Haar and Watson and Madden. We all came through together in that late to mid-70s under Bill Stevens and Barry Davis. So we were on the verge of something and but I'd had enough. I'd had 9 operations and I was very fortunate because the reason I retired was I'd hurt my knee and it was diagnosed as a ACL. And I thought, no, that's it. That's the last thing I need. So I went into hospital and I said to the surgeon, is there any chance that it's not? And he said, look, I'll go and have a look. And if it looks okay, I'll leave it and I'll wake you up. So he woke me up and he said, I've got good news and bad news. He said, your ACL is intact, but unfortunately it's intact by 1/8. So no sport, no jumping up and down stairs, no quickly twisting out of your car because you'll snap it. So I went to Sheeds and he offered me a job as the opposition analyst, one of the first, I think, in AFL, where I would go and watch games and I would use not the technology we've got now, but the old pneumatic and beta and all that sort of thing. I'd be putting tapes in things and running off. And of course, sitting there, I'd have to do it Saturday night because Sheeds would want the tape. So I didn't have a social life. So I'd sit there Saturday night and have to edit out Carlton's centre bounces with Williams, Madden, all these sort of blokes. And I thought, well, I better watch this. And I started taking notes and I developed the document. And what happened in 83, we lost the grand final. We won the Seconds grand final. And after that, I had a real appetite to see. I was 28. I hadn't done anything. And it's quite a funny story because when Noel rang up, he said, they want you to coach, come down to the coaching interview. And so I went, oh, this is good. Hadn't played, hadn't run a lap. I did nothing other than walk. I didn't do any fitness, right? So I let my body, after 9 operations, let's see what nature does.
Yep.
And so after the interview, they said, oh, good, we're going to give you the job and we'll announce the appointment as Robert Shaw playing captain coach. I said, what?
I'm playing?
I'm playing? I said, oh, yeah, righto. Yep. No, because I had to pretend. And I absolutely panicked.
So you had zero intention of playing, obviously, with your knee. You knew it was hanging by a thread.
Yeah, hanging by a thread. So I thought, I haven't run a lap for 12 months. And I'm playing in an outstanding competition against really good players. This will be interesting. So I had to bluff my way through and I started a pre-season. I went to the gym, did some weights. I joined in, because your coach, you've got to be the phys ed bloke, the whole lot. So I joined in 50% of the drills and 50% of the running and gradually built myself up. I had but I did play it smart. Like I spent most of my career at fullback, centre halfback with Essendon. So I thought, no, I'm not going to coach. I'm not going to chase Daryl Sutton around and all these blokes. There's some serious forwards, Wayne Fox, 100 goal. I'm not going to chase these blokes around. Now, I had a bloke called Chris Rewalt. I had Robert Dutton from Carlton, big blokes, and I had a very talented full forward called Scott Adams. So I came up with this theory and I sold it to the club. Look, I'll play in the forward pocket. That way I can observe, coach on the ground, but still make a contribution. So I had these 2 gun key forwards. So I became the third forward, kicked nearly 50 goals, got picked. Then I got picked for the state team and I panicked. And of course, Gary Davidson said, oh, you got to play back. Oh my God. I was on Ian Lowe and Rob Oborne from the ACT. We played and they just destroyed me because I just played out of the forward. So that was, and I played 2 years of footy and I missed the 84 grand final and played in the losing one. So I got suspended in the preliminary final in 84. What did you do?
Was it worthy of suspension?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was quite interesting because we were playing Glenorchy and we had the big men. We had Robert Dutton, Chris Rewalt and Peter Rewalt, big, powerful ruckmen. They had one ruckman and it was a wet day and they were a smaller, quicker side. They went out halfway through the third quarter. They moved out to about a 20-plus lead, nearly, and it was raining. We weren't going to peg them back. It was a big lead. And then I just had a coaching thought, well, they've only got one ruckman. right? So if he doesn't play for the rest of the game, our big blokes might
This
take
was
over.
a premeditated action, Robert.
It was a premeditated action. I got it on tape. It was a fair. No, it wasn't fair. It was a raised forearm. It was in play. The ball was there. It wasn't behind play or anything. But I just stepped over the ball a fraction, and their ruckman had to go to the interchange bench. We kicked the last 6 of the game, went in the grand final, and we won the premiership, and I got a week.
Was it worth it?
Oh, definitely. So I coached from the boundary, and I was so upset because the tribunal bloke gave me a week. And it's an interesting story, and I was very emotional. I started because I'd never played in the premiership, and I came down there to play. So I got really upset, and in the car park, not aggressively, or physically, but a lot of intent, I went at the chairman of the tribunal. Don't you know I've played, this is you could have given me the benefit of the doubt, and I've got my team manager pulling me back, and the chairman of the tribunal said, look, settle down. I said, why should I settle down? I'm going to miss the ground. He said, any other person, I'd just shut up and go home, Robert. He said, what you did, I've given you 1. In any other comp, that's a 6 week.
And by today's standards, how many weeks?
Yeah, it's a 6 to 8. Yeah, easily. Might even be half a year for that one. Yeah, so, that's a product of days gone by.
Yeah. We haven't got all day to chat as much as I would love to, but your coaching career at the AFL level. So how did the opportunity arise for you at Fitzroy? You went there first as an assistant coach?
Just by luck, I'd only been to one club, and Barry Capuano sat me down. I came back from Clarence and got appointed at 30 or 29 to coach the Essendon Reserves, basically out of my depth, 87, 88, something like that, right? But again, Sheedy gave me an opportunity to coach, and then Barry Capuano said, you've been here all your life. Why don't you think, I don't know whether they're going to get rid of me or get a new, but Capuano and these people were great mentors. And he said, go on the club, get more experience. And when you think about it now, and who should have gone to other clubs, Michael Voss, Nathan Buckley, James Hird, right? Go to other clubs.
Get some experience.
Go to other clubs. So I went to the oldest, most traditional, inner city, squeezed in between, culturally significant. I went to Fitzroy and experienced another world and coached the seconds for 2 years, and Curly Austin got a job at the AFL as head of the AIS, I think, something like that. I went for an interview, got the job, coached AFL for 140-odd games, and then I can't remember what I did. I think I went back to Essendon again. So the wheel turned right around, yeah.
Yeah, you had a few Tasmanians at Fitzroy, didn't you, during that era?
Yeah, well, we did. We had Matty Armstrong, who did a knee, Michael Gale on a halfback flank. We got, of course, Alistair Lynch. Brett Stevens cut his teeth at North Hobart. He was centre halfback. So there was a really good Scotty Clayton had just finished. Did I coach Scotty? No, he was there when I was seconds coach. So there's a significant. Arthur Wilson was a great recruiter in Tasmania and went to Wynyard and got Alistair Lynch, and so they're good recruiting. Gale, Armstrong, Lynch is damn good recruiting.
Yep. And Fitzroy through the 80s had been relatively successful. Without winning a premiership, 86 they got to a preliminary final.
Yeah.
When you were at the club, what was that period like in terms of decline in on-field performance? Could you see the finances were in a pretty dire situation?
Decline. And if you look at it at now, 91 would be similar to, we're probably a bit better than North, but very similar. Right back, peel it right back, start again, put in a whole heap of kids, and we got the benefits. We were in the 8, 5 or 6 or whatever it was in those days, for a considerable amount of the 92 and 93 and fell away due to injuries, lack of depth, and had some wonderful wins against, Collingwood. We beat them all. We thrashed Essendon in 92. We won we made the Night Series Grand Final, which in those days attracted 60,000 people. We played the reigning premiers, the Giants Hawthorn, which was a significant moment for Fitzroy. And we were that close. And then finances, players poached from other clubs, players leaving, and the move to the Western Oval.
Yeah.
Really was a cultural shift that the club didn't, purely economical, not cultural. And players, all of us, sort of saw that as, and 2 years later they're gone.
When you reflect on it now, do you think there's anything that could have saved Fitzroy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The adoption of one of the 20 grand plans that I saw for the redevelopment of the Brunswick Street Oval. Some great stuff, a great facility, a miniature version of, Essendon moving to the hangar. But this was at their home, build the gym, new change rooms, have first-class lights, a first-class changing training facility. It was that close it wasn't funny. So that and you know what local councils are like, and we lost the vote on the people in one street. I think it's Dean Street. Right?
You never
on the
forget
outer
a street like that, do you?
On the outer wing of the Brunswick Street Oval, opposite the grandstand, who voted against the lights.
So was this to be a training facility, or you'd play games there as well?
No, training facility and play games. Where were we? Probably at Princess Park still.
Yep.
Yeah, which is just down the road. So that would be a first-class training facility. Our social facility, we would have moved our. We owned the pub. We used the pub in St George's Terrace in Northcote there as our social facility, poker machines. So, and just down the road would have been the ground. I can't remember if we wouldn't have been able to have poker machines and that. So you would have gone back to your pub, and that's as close as I remember. And when that fell through, the club had to try and survive and try and pick up the pieces. And one of the options was that the offer from the Western Bulldogs or Footscray to come and share the facilities on the back of 89, which was the proposed merger, which also went very, very close to,
When at the time Fitzroy was the stronger in the relationship.
I think so.
Proposed.
I can't remember. I think so. Yeah. We certainly, we were going to adopt the ground. It was going to be called the Fitzroy Bulldogs. So they would have lost Footscray, kept Bulldogs, and Fitzroy would have kept Fitzroy. And Rod Austin was going to coach. So it was going to be a heavily slanted
It really was.
to Fitzroy. Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
No, I was fine because I knew how hard it was, and not having a absolutely compassionate, like I did for Essendon, connection with Fitzroy. It was sort of a very good opportunity, business type decision for me. But then I saw, what it meant to people. It was a great learning experience.
What it meant to Fitzroy fans, what it meant
both,
to
everyone.
Footscray fans in particular.
Yeah, and the power of people, and turned that around. So I went to a meeting where the two chairmans sat there, and Nick Collum and was it Dyson or was it Leon Weigard, and sat there and announced it to the media and in the room was the likes of Charlie Sutton and Ted Whitten and their clubs being sold down the river. One of the greatest stories of all time. I was part of it. A very small part of it, but I witnessed it. I witnessed everything. And I think in one of my scrapbooks, I've got the official document, of how they were going to do it. It's incredible reading, and would have been, you merge those two sides, Hawkins, the Atkins, Grant, Roos, you merge those two.
Would have been a pretty good team.
Yeah.
And I suppose, was there a period then where you thought to yourself, as much as you were objectively thinking about it as a smart decision, business-wise, football-wise, survival-wise, did you just think, this is wrong?
Yeah. Well, it's a good story, and I haven't put any I was standing at the back of the room because I'm an assistant coach wondering what my future is.
Yep.
So that's why I went and got there. And just to the left of me, and this is an absolutely, look at you, an absolutely true story. A couple of gentlemen, one a little bit older than the other one, just moved into the room and stood at the back of the room. And they were 5 metres away from me. One was Charlie Sutton and one was Ted Whitten, right? So I think Whitten was there first and Charlie Sutton moved into the room, saw Ted. I looked across because as a kid, Ted Whitten, Charlie Sutton, my God.
Oh, figures.
I'm 5 metres away from them. And Ted Whitten, Sutton had arrived a little bit late. And the proceedings had sort of got underway. Charlie Sutton saw Whitten, made a move. They shook hands, and I'll never forget the words, typical Ted, how are you, mate? I think we're And that was the first time I thought I wasn't that old, but I had the understanding to look at those two blokes as the icons of football, one of the greatest player of all time, and Footscray's, 1954 captain coach, and to think, I'm not sure this is right. That doesn't sound right to me, and it just felt terrible. I'm going, hey, something's going on here.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It taps something.
so that's an incredible memory I've had for that time,
Yeah.
and I've told that story several times, and that's all he said.
Yep. And it was giving up on something that meant so much to them. It was the final.
Whitten and Sutton,
We
and
can't
their
do
team
anything.
and their team's gone. It was bad enough Murray and all these blokes to see Fitzroy go.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So I'm so happy. When they won the premiership, I think of that and I think back and I thought, that was an amazing story. On the back of Peter Gordon, Irene Chatfield, Dennis Gallenberty,
Yes.
and thousands of people
It shows the passion.
counting 20-cent pieces into
Absolutely.
tins, that they stood on the corner of Barclay Street, Footscray. Incredible story. And to not share the journey. I didn't share the journey, but to watch that premiership and to think back and think,
Where
wow,
they
that's
were.
a great footy story. And it's sort of linked to us because our decision in Tasmania has to be economic and has to be viable. But we've got something that the Gold Coast and these other places just can't have, and that is people and the passion of people and the understanding of football.
Yep.
So
One thing I've noticed through this experience, and I've always understood it clearly, there's this alumni. There's this Tasmanian football alumni. So if I met a Tasmanian and they were interested in football, I could chat to them no matter what walk of life they came from, where they came from in the state, about who they followed and who was their local club and where they grew up. And Tasmanians, we get people to come in to have a chat and they bend over backwards to accommodate this podcast.
mate, you and I can have a conversation in a moment, about Pat McCarthy going to Penguin and
Yep.
getting Dula King back and Bill Fielding, right, and winning a premiership.
Oh, yes.
Was it against Cooey?
They
It-
did,
It
yeah.
was Stephen Beaumont and
Yes.
Daryl Shepherd and these, and we can talk about that. And 30 seconds later, we can go and talk about the Bob Wilson and the 73 side at Scottsdale that went to the Australian Championships and had the Hall boys and Lethborg and Nichols.
Left balls.
And incredible conversations we can have. And that's what people have got to understand. Tasmanians have conversations, right? Other franchises, and Tasmania's not a franchise, other franchises that are implanted can't have those conversations because we have identity and we have connectivity. And so that is extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. At least GWS went and got some campaigners, Sheedy, Gubby Allen, that knew the game, that understood people, and it's a hard build. But so that would be at my age and what is That's all my involvement. I'd love to see it set up properly. I don't like this thing where you just beam people down into a job in Tasmania. They stay for a year. They stay for 12 months. Stepping stone. And, something's better come up. Oh, see you later. Thanks very much. You can't go wrong with people, the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's going to be key to this being a great success. And you've got the jumpers of all the regions.
We'll just do it quickly. That's the 3 regions. That's the TFL.
That's your jumper.
Number 7, Shaw. That's one of the most talented players ever to play for the Northwest Union and Tasmania. That's Big Bill Williams.
He played at Penguin.
That's
my region.
And that's the original NTFA jumper, number 17, and that was worn by the Clarence and North Launceston champion in the 80s and the 70s, Nick Clark.
Fantastic.
So
you are doing a bit of work behind the scenes to pull some of this great Tasmanian history together?
Yeah, that's another major goal, and there's a number of us. Look, we started the Facebook page, which you remember, we've got over 5,500.
So this was something you set up during COVID when people were at home. It was almost a mental health or an escape for people to connect through the love of Tassie football.
Without qualifications, we found that people were getting ill. A few of the older people were, living alone. So it's one of the most satisfying things I've ever done in my life to start this Facebook page called the Tasmanian Australian Rules Football Officials and Family.
That's what it's called. So if people want to join it?
20% female, many widows. We've got it means so much to us. And that's what I'm trying. If the message comes across and the right people are listening, this is what we're all about. I've got Marge Baldock as part of our group. Doc's
what a beautiful
wife,
woman.
Elaine Lee, Gypsy Lees, women that have lost their husbands and in their 70s and 80s and 90s that because their husband played for the state, they want a connection so we've connected people, we've found people. Does anyone remember Alistair Nicholson? He played in the 75 Penguin Premiership and I've lost contact with him. And he was my great mate and I'm worried, is he okay? We'll put out a message and we'll find that bloke in 5 minutes. And we've also found enough stuff that has been pledged to us to undertake a feasibility study to have a Tasmanian Australian Rules Football Museum. We have contact with over 300 families that have pledged Dad's jumper. I've got all Dad's state jumpers, Sandy Bay jumpers, club jumpers that are no longer. We've sent our people down to the West Coast, which was one of the great competitions, Smelters, Gormanston. We've got all those jumpers, got all the badges.
Magnificent.
And that is a dream of mine to have a museum, hopefully connected with the team. It would be a 5-year plan for us. And then the first thing you do. Now, I categorically tell you we have no preferred location. Wouldn't it be great the first thing you do is you get off the Spirit of Tasmania and you're in Essendon Sport, we've got to go to that Hall of Fame. We've got to go to that museum. Or at York Park, or if they build the thing down in Tasmania. Imagine saying the Premier says, we're going to build this and we're going to give you, on the 3rd floor, we're going to give you the Hall of Fame Museum. Do what you like with it because
I think part of this Tasmanian team, as much as it's about the future, there's got to be a connection to the past.
There is. It'll be a huge celebration of the past without living in the past.
No,
but
exactly.
Using it, you have to have a fallback.
But the past gives you the understanding of where you are now and why what you're doing is meaningful.
You don't have to fabricate anything. You've already got a culture. You've already got a knowledge, and you've also got people that know their footy. You've got a built-in culture.
I had so much to talk to you about today, about you specifically. So your time as coach of the Adelaide Crows.
No.
Your administrative roles.
No, Tasmania.
You're coaching at Brighton Grammar, but naturally.
Oh, you can talk about that. Three premierships. You can talk about that.
As I suspected, you've deviated this conversation always back to Tasmania, which has been fantastic.
I did it very well, didn't I?
Magnificently.
You were nearly going to enter Adelaide territory, and I've turned you round beautifully.
Yeah, I sensed you didn't want to go there necessarily, but we do have a series of questions I have to ask you.
Oh, do you?
Before we go, and they're all related to Tasmania. So these will be right up your alley, short, sharp answers, and we'll move through them pretty briskly. So, and they're tough, very tough, based on prior experience. Who is the greatest footballer Tasmania has produced?
Darryl Baldock.
Okay. What should the name of the Tasmanian AFL team be?
I don't want to pinch the Devils or, the Jack Jumpers is great. People laughed at that. But there's a lesson for us. I know the Jack Jumpers, but it's so.
Oh, I love it.
Everyone grew up. It's like a birthmark.
Totally.
Have you been bitten by a Jack Jumper? Oh, you must be Tasmanian.
Exactly. And I had no concept that people did not know what a Jack Jumper was. I said,
Over here.
If you've stood at one on a nest, you know what? I mean, we used to get bitten by Jack Jumpers a minimum of 3 or 4 times.
So
every
something
summer.
like that. I haven't got a name, but there's something creative
something
there.
Iconic.
Yes, iconic.
And unique to Tasmania.
Yeah.
What should the team colours be?
Rose, primrose and green.
Love it. Who should be the club's inaugural coach?
Well, Fags will be too old, won't he? He'd be a Chris Fagan clone.
Okay.
Can I say that?
Yes. All right.
He is the, what's the word? Quintessential? No, whatever the word is. They made the template with him.
Yep.
So if you can clone him and find someone like him, ideal.
Okay. I like that answer. Who should be the inaugural president?
That's a very, very good question. Can you have a 70-year-old president?
Well, the USA's got one.
Okay, me.
Love it. Robert Shaw for president. You can see the slogans, the banners going up. Who should Tasmania play in its first AFL game?
What a great question. What's the connection? Tasmania versus, well, we've always been in the Big Four. We're a foundation state. So we play either West Australia, we play we play the West Coast, Port Adelaide, or Carlton.
Okay. You've gone
because that's my connection. Only Carlton because they've won the most premierships with Essendon. Port Adelaide representing South Australia or Adelaide.
Very old club.
Yeah, very old club. And yeah. So yeah, that's my thinking. And you don't worry about it. It's got to be one from the 3 states. Then you can market it as the three of the representatives of the foundation states.
Okay.
You can throw the Pies into the mix,
Bombers.
Yeah, Essendon. You'll get a crowd. That was my thinking. Sorry.
All right. Should the Tasmanian song be something new or in the traditional mould of a footy team song? So one of the old classic songs.
Again, we'll sit down and write one. Unique.
Yes.
Unique. There's some great songs out there. There's a great song. I don't know. You'll find it. You might even run it. I wrote a song about Tasmania and Lake Pedder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard this. Is it the one that goes, it's about time Tassie had its own team? Is that?
No. This is about the fight for Lake Pedder.
Oh, okay.
It's something,
yep.
And the words are, has to be something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
You go and find that.
Okay.
It's a great song and people will know it. And I'll actually go home and I'll find it and I'll get your number and I'll text it.
Sounds good.
It's a political song, but the theme is they fought for that and they won it. So it must have been something worth fighting for.
So far we've
it's got the Tasmanian name in it. It says, yeah.
You're appointed so far as the person responsible for appointing a senior coach. You'll be the inaugural club president, and you're going to write the team song, Rob. And you're going to get the museum off the ground. Lucky you've retired.
Now, hang on. I hope I'm not coming across like that.
Not at all, no.
But the only thing, I'm confident that I know what's needed. Yep. Can I answer it like
Absolutely.
that? I know what would work, and I damn as sure know what won't work. So if anyone asks me, I have an opinion on how, Robert, we're going to give you this whole team. You're the only one doing it. How are you going to do it?
Yeah, we just set it up.
And I'll write an essay for. Yes, go.
That leads into my next question then, and it's another tough one. If Tasmania was to get free reign on any AFL player, who would you pick? You'd have one player.
And when are we playing? How many years?
2028, but let's say we were coming in tomorrow. Who from the current crop of AFL players, who would you go, we'll have you, thank you very much?
I'll have Jack Riewoldt in the squad.
Okay.
He'd be on the bench. Right?
He won't. I mean, as much as that's a compliment, I don't think Jack will like that.
And you know who I'd have on the bench with him? And this will give you an indication, Mitch Robinson.
Oh, yes.
Right?
You want a bit of animal in that side,
No,
do you?
I just want, because if they put on the jumper and you're walking down a race with those two, that's unconditional.
The passion would explode.
You want to turn up. You want to turn up. So I'm going to say, right, they're not my best players. They're not going to.
We'll give you a 2-for-1 deal, all right? Usually you can only name one, but we'll give you Robbo and Jack.
I'm going to say Robbo and Jack.
Beautiful. Where would you recommend a tourist visit in Tasmania? Where's your must-go-to place? Where do you recommend people go?
Nico, for goodness sake.
Penguin.
Well, let's start by make sure you put the car on the boat.
Yep.
Right? So we're hitting Devonport, right? Just have a quick trip down to the Devonport Oval.
And then go right along the Bass Highway further down the northwest coast.
Sorry.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm going left and go to the Baldock statue at Latrobe.
Yep.
Right, do that. Then if the museum it's Launceston, you can go and have lunch at York Park, go for the museum, right? And now you've got a choice, right? You can go back right to, what's the Lake Cradle Mountain?
Yep.
You can do a little bit of fishing through the lakes, or you can travel down the east coast and end up at Port Arthur. You've got a choice, but make sure you go to Scottsdale, because that's a town of about 1,200 people that has been probably the greatest individual football.
I think they won a state final.
They won everything, and when you go over the hill, over the sideline, and you see it in the distance, you go, so that is what. It is unbelievable to go to that place. I love going. Every time I go home, I've got a good friendship with the Lethborgs. I've met the Halls, and they so welcoming. And you go there, so just go and drive into the Scottsdale footy ground and just take a deep breath, and that's probably all you'll need to know about Tasmania.
All right. The siren has sounded. Tasmania's 5 points up. Which player, current or former, the siren sounded, Tasmania's 5 points down. Let me clarify. Which Tasmanian player, current or former, is having the shot after the siren to win the game?
Oh, I'm glad I picked him. We've done Riewoldt's come on at 3/4 time. Just slotted him into the pocket.
Fresh legs.
I would have no doubt that Jack Riewoldt would absorb the pressure, relish the pressure. 30,000 either north or south, it's irrelevant. And he puts us in front to win our first game by a point. And it's a bloody good job, because he'll be about 38 at the time.
Robert Shaw, are you a believer?
Yes, I am, and it should happen. It's the right thing to do. It has strong economic backing, right? It's been given the tick of approval that there can be a 19th team by the Carter Report, commissioned by the AFL, and they have a proven culture, which makes the whole difference. So, true believer, and in my lifetime, I'm going to be sitting in the grandstand watching that first game.
You'll have a lot of people putting their hand up to be next to you, I reckon. Robert Shaw, it's been a real
Especially
treat.
if I'm the president.
I'd rather be in the outer than up in the
Yeah, I know.
president's
Oh,
corporate suites. But, Robert, so nice chatting to you.
These are the things I love doing in footy these days.